what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Lineage Break, a Grand Archive TCG podcast. I am your host, Cam. With me, as always, is the glue, Steven.
Good morning, Cameron.
Hi, Steven.
How are you today, Cameron?
I'm tired, Steven.
I know.
I'm a little tired today. I was up a little bit too late last night. I wasn't even doing anything particularly good or useful.
Yes, you were. Yeah. What's that rank in TFT now?
I was playing TFT.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah. I feel like I finally figured it out.
Yeah. Did you crack the code? Are you back up?
I've been having a little struggling with set 11 a little bit, but I feel like I've cracked the code. I had a pretty good day yesterday. We're back in gold.
Oh, back in gold.
So, yeah.
Last time I saw you were in silver, so that's an improvement.
Yeah, it's weird where unlike most games, like because I just started playing last season, like towards the end of set 10 is when I started playing TFT. And so I ended last season in gold, which is like not really anything to write home about. But season 11, they like reset me to iron, which is really strange. I'm so used to like rank reset puts you down like a division or whatever. Right. So they reset me to iron, so I had to like go all the way through bronze and silver again. But yeah, I'm back in gold. I feel like I've finally figured it out and know what I'm doing. So
you cracked the code, guys.
Cracked the code. Playing a little TFT. Jesus Christ, dude. Before we, I'm going to go on this non sequitur as long as possible. I spent way too much money to get they do gacha characters for TFT in League of Legends. It was so toxic, and I hate it. And it's god-awful expensive.
A TFT pay to win?
Well, no, they're just like fucking avatars, right? Right.
Oh,
yeah,
so it doesn't even...
Cosmetics, yeah, for sure. But they are in a gacha box.
Sick.
And
did you get the pretty girl?
I did.
Which pretty girl?
It's Morgana.
Oh, yeah,
that's my girl.
Yeah. So, okay.
I gave her a costume and everything. She has a unique animation when she kills you, so it's pretty good.
That's sick.
Yeah. A lot of money, though. We're not going to talk about that. Hey, welcome to the show. This is Lineage Break. We talk about that Grand Archive TCG, the one with the anime girls on it.
Yeah.
We're here today, as usual, on this. It's a little dreary out.
Yeah, it's a gloomy Friday morning.
A lot of rain this week.
Yeah, a lot of rain.
So maybe that's why I'm so tired.
I see. I don't know. I feel the exact opposite, actually. Yeah. I feel like I've been in a fog for a while.
You're emo empowered from the rain.
I think, but I think because the rain is here, and I don't know. This week has just been a weird week. Yeah. I feel good.
You seem to be in good spirits, which is good.
Right? It's.
I'm glad.
I feel good. I feel whole, which is nice.
This is like what they show to people on the news before you like go on a serial killing rampage. Like,
it's not gonna happen.
I feel whole and complete, and
it's not gonna happen.
It's on the news.
He murdered 15 people. Yeah, no, there's no way.
The rain is empowering you, like that Hillary Duff song.
I don't. I don't.
We'll listen to that later. I'm not gonna sing it for you. I'm sorry, chat. Maybe another day. Maybe in Las Vegas.
Oh, we'll be doing much singing in Las Vegas, I'm assuming.
For Worlds, May 10th through 12th.
Yeah.
See you there. We'll be there.
Probably.
I don't know, whatever.
No, I will.
Still got to book planes and stuff.
I'll be there.
But other than that, we've sort of... We're in the slow time. We talked a little bit last week about Siladar's cursed tweets on the internet, giving us a little bit of spoiler stuff.
Speaking of which, as you're saying, like clockwork,
yeah.
Tidbit 15 just dropped as you said his name.
Ooh.
So I'm going to read this for you guys. Tidbit 15. There exists an Astra Element ally card with Star Calling.
Dude, they did it. We got another card with Star Calling.
Yeah.
That's hopefully playable.
Yeah.
I hope it's Ghost of Pendragon.
Yeah. It's wild that he chose the time we go live.
He knows. He's trying to derail the show. I guarantee he's watching the show and he's trying to derail the show.
I'm just saying, it's
just reasonable. I've been thoroughly derailed. I hope it's Ghost of Pendragon.
Could you?
Can I star call my Ghost of Pendragon? Is that okay?
Can I? Please, please no.
It's not. It's Ghost of Pendragon, but it just glimpses 4 twice instead of drawing 2 cards. Is that okay?
It's a 4/5 too.
Yeah.
For 2.
Yeah.
Star calling 0.
Yeah. Right.
Jesus,
this sounds great. Please give her
we
something.
broke it.
Dear God, she needs something.
We broke it. I don't even think that would do it.
Yeah, that is absurd. Are you kidding me?
I don't even know if that would do it.
The free 4 or 5 off the top of your library. Yeah, that glimpses 8. Yeah, that'd be pretty good. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Show it to me, the Silidar. I know you're out there. All right, just send me the card file, please. I beg you, please. I'm on the ledge. I need something.
But you get all those pretty cards.
That's true.
No other deck.
So last week we went to a store championship. We had a regional semi-locally. Those both happened.
Yep.
So you and I did not go to the regional.
We did not because 7 hours is a hike.
Yeah. So we went to a small store championship, which was unfortunately only 5 people.
Correct.
But it was a good time. That was won by
a lot of good people.
By one of our locals, which is great.
Yep.
We had Trent and Trevor and Mark all went to the regionals in Virginia.
Yep, at Gaming.
Is that one? Gaming Giant.
And they also hit a store championship. I'm not sure what store that was at.
I don't know.
But congratulations to Mark. He won both of them.
He won. I believe I was wrong. He did not win the store championship.
Oh, I thought he said he did.
Somebody else did. I think it was Steve-O.
Oh, I thought he said
Steve-O Worlds qualified. Steve-O, I believe, won the store championship.
Oh, I thought he said he had won.
I don't know. But he did win the regional. So congratulations.
Congratulations to Mark.
Yeah, so we're in full swing of the regional season.
We are in the event grinding mode,
and it never stops. We have events all the time, which is great.
Yeah,
so
it's awesome.
Always something to go to on the weekend, which is perfect.
It's not only that, but it's also so great to just look at the metas at all of these different places, right? Like it's every store has their own sub meta. Whereas there's a thing, but other decks that are just you would never think of. At the Michigan Regionals, there was a Wind Tristan deck that got top 8.
That Michigan Regionals was wild.
Yeah,
there was that Tristan deck. There was that Fire Arisana deck.
Right.
Very strange. It's everything's been sort of like a little microcosm, right? Which is nice. It doesn't feel like seasons past where there's one deck that's dominating the format.
Right. It's not. Sort of Avarice the deck meta anymore, which is awesome.
But yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that later on in the show. But before we get too far, I do want to say for people that are in our New England area, of course, I have to use the show as my soapbox and my advertising space. If you guys are in New England, we will be hosting Massachusetts Regionals on April 20th. 420, whoop, whoop, whoop. April 20th here at Webway Games, Marlborough, Massachusetts, 496 Post Road East. Be there, be square. Tickets will be up later this afternoon, so keep your eyes peeled on the store's Facebook, on Discord. I will post it, in all of the places that you would assume to find it.
Yep.
I'll probably even post it on the tuber here, so... If you guys are in the area, make sure the tickets will be going up soon, and we hope to see you there. Should be a good time. Us doing the thing. Steven will be winning the event.
He says that every time, and you jinx me every time.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm here for, know? Because it's a bad look, right? If you win the event that we're hosting, so I have to jinx you so that you lose.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
it's fine.
You can get top 4. That's fine.
Can I get top 8 like I did last time?
Top 8 for the top 4 event. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
all out. That's okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So what we've decided to do today, it's a little bit early. I know. Relax.
We still have a while to go.
It's a little bit
However,
early. But
I think it's good to look at.
Yeah, we're in the slow season right now. That's what I was trying to say when we were talking about Silidar and his cursed MRC tidbits. That we're in the slow news season. Of course, regionals are in full swing, so that's taking a lot of people's time and attention. But we have, very notably, something that has not happened in Grand Archive past, is we are towards the end of the ALC season. We have about a month left. Worlds is going to be the final, literal final day of the ALC season. But we've had way more large tournaments than we've ever had in the past. This is our first Grand Archive season where we've had nationals, North America, SEA, Oceania. Ascent, surely, and also, Worlds. It's going to be our first season that we have all of these very big, prestigious events. But since we're getting closer to the end of the season, we figured today we would take the time to do our Alchemical Revolution retrospective, talk about the set, the impact that it had on the game, how we've felt it's shaped the meta and the health of the game and all that good stuff that we do in these retrospectives. If you guys have not watched them, we do one of these for every set, so you can go check out our DOA and our FDC retrospectives if you have not already. But we are we're good chunk through ALC season. Of course, we still have regionals and we still have worlds, but I feel like we're at the point with so many large, high-profile events. Even like it feels like there was way more pressure on the player base to perform at things like nationals rather than worlds, right? It was way more pressure on any sort of competitive player to figure out the meta, figure out what deck they want to play, to get that qualification for worlds rather than, once they're already at worlds. It's obviously a very high pressure event to become the world champion, but you've, sort of made it over the I think the largest hurdle, right? Is to be one of those.
It'll be very interesting
players.
To see what deck choices of the 16 players what they bring.
Yeah, we you see this a lot in games that have world championships like this. We haven't seen it a whole lot recently. A lot of games have pushed more towards the much larger, more open invite world championships. But when you get these very small tournaments, you get a lot of decisions that are made based on this extremely small field. So it's usually not a microcosm of the larger meta because the other 15 people that you're playing against. You have some sort of inclination on what decks they like to play, what you think they might bring, et cetera, et cetera. You see Caven in there, you see he's playing an allies deck, right? Stuff like that. So you get to sort of make your deck choice there. But so speaking of the ALC meta, ALC is a set. Steven, why don't you start us off? How do you feel? General thoughts.
Here we go. I think for the first time in a long time, the game feels healthy. I think the diversity that Diana, Arisana, and Tanaris has brought to the game has widened the field enough where there's kind of a counterbalance to everything right now. There's not a single thing I can think obviously Sylvie is still having trouble in the competitive space, and Arisana is also having trouble in the competitive space. But for the most part, the rest of the meta feels healthy and feels vibrant. You're not having just here's Merlin. It's there's all different flavors of decks now, and it feels awesome. It feels like every time I sit down to play the game, I'm just oh, I wonder what they're on. There's 5 different aggro decks that you can play. There's a bunch of different control decks that you can play, and it just feels good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Obviously, it's surprising me because I thought it was going to be hyper convoluted to everything. Diana is a breakout star, I think she's performing way better than I could have ever imagined, because originally when we were looking at all the cards back when we were getting spoilers and stuff, the gun mechanics seemed complex,
obtuse,
right?
I would argue that it is.
However, it seems after playing for a while, it's very strong, and it's not as hard to pull off as it originally seemed. You know, I thought like, oh, they just make a gun and then you kill the gun and then they lose. But that's not how it works.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I thought seeing how many Diana decks exist and how competitive they can be, I think is awesome. That it wasn't just kind of like oh hey, here's 3 new champions, but Lorraine's still queen. And I'm glad to see that, you know, other champions get to shine. Other elements besides Crux are viable, right?
Yeah, I think when we look back, right, and that's why we do these sort of retrospectives, is you know, not only for you, the audience, which is of course why we do the show, but I think it's really interesting to, you know, for Steve and I to reflect on not only Grand Archive's journey, because, you know, we've been here since the beginning, but also our journey through the game, right? So I think when we look back 5 years from now, you know, God willing, Grand Archive is still around, me and Steve are still here. I think that this will be the Grand Archive that people talk about. You know, this will be that like first Pro Tour era Magic, right? The golden age, you know, where I agree. I think this is the first time that Grand Archive to me has felt like a complete game. DOA I think was ironically closer than FTC to feeling like a complete game, but it was so much more simple. Less diversity because there was less choices, right? Then we had FTC, which was a bit of a nightmare looking back on it now, which is okay for us to say because we've come back, you know, out on the other side in a really positive way. And I think, yeah, ALC is the first time that the game has felt whole. Every champion, with the exception of the 2, which of course we're not going to harp on the Sylvie nor the Arisana problem. That's
it's fine
for later.
It's fine.
But
recollections are coming.
Yeah, for one of those, it's true. But I feel like the meta has felt very healthy. There's a lot of different deck choices that you can make, and you know, I'll pose the question to you in a minute. You know, as far as power level of certain archetypes goes, but before we get too far away from, you know, the overwhelming positive nature of where the meta is. Even if you look at all of these large high level tournaments, nationals, Ascent Ontario, there was a different deck and a different player at the top of all of those events, which I think is just so indicative of how healthy the game feels right now. That you can sit down with most of the champions in the game, most of the classes in the game, and, you know, find some sort of archetype that has success. There is, of course, you know, still the problems of the game being still fairly small, right? We're only in set 3, so the card pool is not gigantic. There are still some cards that see like near ubiquitous play, right? And that's understandable. We can talk a little bit about that in a minute, but yeah, I'm really happy with not only how the game is growing and the growth of the community, but I think the health of the game is really important. You hear a lot when people talk about card games that the third set is the make or break, right? Like they've had enough time to sort of find their footing, to find an audience, and to hone in on what the game is supposed to be, right? We can't expect a developer to always like find their voice and find what they want their card game to be in the first set or two, right? It's difficult, and especially, you know, we love them to death, but the weebs of the short people are new. They're not like, you know, veteran game designers. This is their first project, so it does take some time to sort of find how you want your game to play and what that sort of, you know, feel is. And I feel like ALC has really honed in on that, and they really knocked it out of the park. So I'm overwhelmingly very, very positive on ALC. I've very few real complaints. Obviously, for the camera, I like to, you know, complain about Cleric, but like that's just, you know, mostly a facade for the joke, right? Like I understand that not everything's going to be
don't
super
let him
powerful right
don't
out of the gate.
Don't let him fool you guys. He beats butt with Cleric every week.
That is so not true.
And by
I just, like,
beats-
literally 1-2 every week.
And,
but
and by beats butt, I mean he beats my butt every
Yeah,
week,
and
and I get real sad.
I play Steve in the O2 bracket, and we're ambassadors. We gotta give the wins to other people.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Gotta keep them.
Yep.
That's what we're gonna say.
That's how we're rolling.
That's the excuse we're taking.
I've
That's
never
the stance.
I've never once had an issue beating anyone. I'm so good at this game because I can read.
But we choose to not win, because it's better for the community.
You guys know that, right? Everyone knows I can read. I know how to read.
But so sweeping thoughts about the meta aside, now that we're sort of through a large portion of the ALC meta and we have a picture of what's good, I would be pretty shocked if in the regional season we saw any sort of like breakout decks that we haven't seen yet. I would be kind of surprised.
Right.
I think there is a possibility that we see some sort of like breakout strategy for Worlds, but like I had said a minute or two ago, it's such a hard tournament to use that as like real information. Right?
If we do see like some wild breakout deck, it's only good into that microcosm of Worlds, right? Because it's someone who knows what the other 15 people are playing, and they're like, oh, this deck is going to slap. And then they just come in and do the thing. But
yeah, I mean, it's such a tight-knit community, right? That so many of these players in that top 16 have, one or two teammates that are also in that top 16, right? So even within Worlds, you're going to see these like smaller groups of people, testing together and preparing for the tournament together.
Right.
So I think we will definitely see that sort of, these people chose to take this deck because they think X other people are going to be playing, whatever else. But I think there's a couple of notes that are possibly concerning for the future of the game. Like we said a moment ago, there are certain choices in the game right now that are fairly ubiquitous. Cards that are so powerful that they find their way into every strategy that you can legally play them. There's two reasons for this, right? It can be the individual power level of the card, or it can simply be the fact that the game is so small and things haven't been like replaced with more niche replacements for each class, right?
Correct.
So like the my healthy example is Gildas, right? I think Gildas is a super balanced card.
We did the thing.
Where she's like an overstated body, right? Obviously, three reserve costs for 4/3 is insane, but it is a real cost to play around Gildas. You do have to plan your turns around playing Gildas, and most people are like, oh, you have 7 cards in hand, you play a Gildas, she has 4 power, right? It's like the level 1, but you also have to be thinking about that is my plan to play this Gildas 3 turns from now. How do I, make sure that I have the right amount of cards in hand to do this X amount of turns, whatever. So I think Gildas is a very a balanced card, and she does see a lot of play, especially in these aggro strategies, but I do think in a lot of ways that is because those classes don't have a immediate replacement, right? We see some things like creeping up. You look at stuff like Trained Sharpshooter, which a lot of us, at least locally, call Gildas at Home, right? Because she's very much that similar profile. She's a 3-mana 4/3 with some shenanigans that you have to play around, right? So I think that's a healthy example of a card that's seeing pretty ubiquitous play right now that probably in the future will dwindle.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have cards that on their individual power level are a little bit frightening, cards like Creative Shock, right? Which Creative Shock, I can't imagine a card that they print that replaces that card because it's so overtly powerful, right?
Yeah, I have no words on it just because like it is one of those cards in even, the developers see that, by putting it on the watch list and stuff, it's just like that card is problematic. It's hard to like. There's no good way to replace it.
Right.
It's just one of those things that, like, over time with a larger card pool, something will come up, and then they'll be able to ban it.
Yeah, do you think that's the case? Do you think that some of these cards that are on the watch list are sort of like temporary fixes to like fill holes in color archetypes?
I think I don't know. So like obviously I don't have any inside, but from what I would assume, they created these cards and they're like, this is a sick design. And then the game comes out and then they go, oh, whoops. That might not be such a sick design. Especially in like all of like early games where like it was just like I'm turboing through my deck with creative shocks, pitching, float, leveling up and killing you.
Right.
And now it's very similar, except now we have tools that make it faster. Like more targeted float and stronger cards to draw into.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if the remaining cards that are in category 3, right?
Yes.
3.
Yeah, it goes up. Category 1 is the ban list.
Right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if the cards that exist in category 3 exist there, because they are like 100% scheduled to get banned once the card pool widens.
Right.
There are cards in there to this day that I'm still confused by.
Sure.
Like Varuk.
Sure.
I understand that is powerful text, like can't stop red source damage. I don't think it deserves to be there though, compared to the other cards that are on in category 3.
Yeah, I found the way that they treat the ban list very interesting. It gives us sort of a look into how the developers feel about card design, right? I think Varuk is a great example of a card that does not really see a whole lot of play, and even at the time that it was placed on the ban list, wasn't seeing a whole lot of play.
It was just in Fire Lorraine.
Yeah,
it wasn't even.
Yeah, Fire Rye was playing it, but this is a long time ago, right?
Right.
This was DOA that it got put on the list. It was the first, I believe, BNR, the one that Ascension got banned, that Varuk was put into category 3. But
not Ascension, Avarice.
Sure. Interesting that it gives us like a look into how they feel about the cards that they've designed, where most other games are very reactionary, right? Like cards only get banned when they're seeing too much play. Correct. Or having too much success, where at least on the watch list in Grand Archive, a couple of times cards have been put there that the developers are just like, we see that this could be a problematic design in the future, which I find super interesting. I would really love to hear from them. I don't know if I'll ever get the opportunity to get this sort of information. Silidar, if you want to be on the podcast, you let me know. But like you said about Creative Shock, I wonder if that card is a mistake, like if they feel like it's a mistake, or if it is a necessary evil. Right, like with the card pool being so small, and you want Fire to have its identity about card selection and the access to like discarding cards into your graveyard and these Fire cards in your graveyard synergy. These are all things that are very ingrained in the Fire identity, and Creative Shock does fit all of those tenets very well. It's obviously a very powerful card, but it does fit the Fire tenets very well. And I wonder if when it was designed, back in DOA, it was we don't think this card is as good as it is. It comes out and like you said, they're like, oops, card's a little bit more powerful than we thought it would be. Or if it was like, we know this card is very powerful. We know that in the early stages of the game, we need this to sort of bridge the gap until the card pool is bigger. And then at some point, we will eventually have to deal with it. I'd be really curious, probably only after that card gets banned, to hear what the thought process is from the developers. But that, of course, brings us to another example for this ALC season that has shown to be very strong, very ubiquitous across the board, and that is Scepter of Lumina from the Proxy's Vault. So Scepter is in that same place that Creative Shock is, right? But this is what leads me to think that perhaps these are designed with the intent that they won't be around forever. This is a much more recent design. Right. Like Creative Shock has been around since the beginning. It's very possible that one like slipped through the cracks and was a little bit better than they thought it would be. Scepter of Lumina was intentionally designed, and I think they did a fantastic job in that it is so powerful that it is single-handedly lifted what was widely considered the worst basic element in the game in water to not only like competitive relevance, but to arguably, the best element in the game.
Right.
Just wholly through Scepter of Lumina, right? If you take Scepter of Lumina away, none of the water decks, literally none of them, would function as they are and see really any competitive relevance at all.
Right.
And of course, it is now also on the watch list, which was a recent addition, but I think they see that same writing on the wall that as water as a basic element gets better, you will eventually have to remove this card. Like,
Right.
if all things are created equal, water can't have Scepter of Lumina, and wind and fire don't have any like ancillary, right?
I think if I was a betting man, I would bet that
Are you a betting man?
sometimes.
Okay. So we're betting.
Yeah. I would bet that Scepter of Lumina was created as a direct response to something like Creative Shock, where water was unplayable
Yeah, very bad.
for the most part. And you had this meta that was you're either a super fast fire deck as Fire Xander, or you are playing Ferrari or Wind Allies.
Right.
Those are the three decks that existed.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get Scepter of Lumina, and for a while no one figured it out. So it was kind of like, it's water's whatever. But with the addition of ALC and a lot of new strong water cards, I feel like Scepter of Lumina really found its place.
Right.
And it skyrocketed water into being, like you were saying, probably the strongest color in the game.
It's at least in the conversation.
Correct. In the same time,
Mm-hmm.
with the exception of probably Wind Crux decks, Wind has recently been almost unplayable compared to water and fire. So it is 100% understandable that they put the card that made the water deck on the list, right?
Right.
It'll be interesting to see how MRC deals with that.
Right.
Because at the moment, Wind feels weak.
Sure.
And I understand, like, obviously there's going to be always like a weird balancing issue between the three colors. Not all of them are always going to be good. But at the time being, I feel like it would be interesting to see if we get a Wind Regalia on Proxy's Vault to kind of bridge that gap again for the time being.
Yeah, there's two schools of thought, right? I don't think that this is true, right? But as an example, if we say that Creative Shock and Scepter of Lumina are the like pillars of those colors, and those are the problems, and those are the reason that Wind is being kept down, which I think is an over exaggeration, and we're just going to use that as an example, so don't crucify us in the comments. But if we do that, there's two schools of thought, right? Like you can build Wind up to meet that same power level that those cards are on, and maybe that is the journey they want to take with the game. Maybe the eventuality, we're sort of talking about these eventualities of Creative Shock leaving, of Scepter Lumina leaving. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe the game just continues to get more powerful, and those cards become sort of like the floor, right? Like this is where we want the game to be, so they bring Wind up and other archetypes up to meet the power level of those cards. Or, maybe they just get rid of both of them altogether, and then they don't have to increase the power of the Wind. They bring everything down, right? Really depends on the like school of thought that the developers choose to take.
So my question to you.
Yeah.
If they remove Creative Shock and Scepter of Lumina.
Yeah.
Do you think that those two elements are as strong as everything that Wind has? Without those two cards.
I think fire is fine. I think fire is probably without a world where Scepter doesn't exist, fire is far and away the best element. I think in a world where Creative Shock also doesn't exist, fire has a much easier time playing the game that water does. So I think should that happen, of course these are all theoreticals. Should that happen, I assume we'll go back to like where the DOA FTC meta was, where fire and wind were the playable elements, water was not. I think fire is probably would be my pick for the strongest element in the game right now. I think it's close. I think water is very good because Scepter is so strong, but I think like by and large the entire card pool considered fires very, very strong. So I think that they would probably be fine. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying, that I am interested how MRC will shape the game. I wonder if, how many sets does the card pool need to increase before we consider taking a look at these more powerful cards.
Right.
Something that I really like about GA is how often and vocal the developers are about the game. Like, we get a ban list every 3 weeks. Our next ban list is on Monday, on April Fool's Day. So
which is tough.
We'll talk about that next week. I'm sure it'll go great. And I wonder, maybe even they decide to like shake things up before Worlds. It's going to be interesting to see how MRC shapes the game. But I do think that looking back on ALC, obviously very positive, and we're both very, very thrilled with how the game looks. Very thrilled with the appearance of not only new champions in the form of Diana and Tonorus, seeing real competitive play, and Diana taking down Essie and Nats in the Hand of Limelight, but also the sort of revival of Xander. I think is really interesting.
Yeah,
how powerful Xander has been since the release of Xander Deft Executor, and how much of the meta share that deck has been taking.
Yeah. Because not only do you have your Luxem decks that benefited greatly from it, but I think every single variant of Xander, and new ones like with the Water Ally Xander that we saw, I think literally a Deft Executor has just made Xander to the point where he is part of the contention of like one of the best heroes,
right,
or champions. Where I feel like if we were talking pre Executor, like probably down there with Sylvie, probably a little bit better than Sylvie because the fire list existed, but that wasn't. I don't know if I consider the fire Xander deck like a Xander deck, other than you play Xander to play.
You play Korasi Courier and Poison Dagger.
Correct.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, Deft Executor really pulled Xander into the limelight. Pun intended.
He wasn't playing Xander.
I know he wasn't playing Xander. But anyways, but yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like before, like you would see Luxem Xander and you're like, okay. Mm-hmm. But now Luxem Xander is everywhere.
It's very good.
It's a very strong deck. It's hard to come back once they start, and Deft Executor just makes it easier for them to get there.
So yeah, we've seen these new champions take their share of the meta. Like you had mentioned earlier, we see Merlin and Lorraine still holding a real purchase in the field. So it's been very diverse, but it does need to be talked about that a lot of these archetypes are held up by a few cards. Mm-hmm. It's not I think there are very few decks in the game right now that are, I think with the exception of like the Wind Allies decks, Crux or whatever, that are not like held up by a single card, right? They're very strong power level across the board. Right. A lot of these other archetypes are held up by 4 or 5 of the cards in their deck, and the rest of them just sort of
are there,
are brought along for the ride.
Right.
So with ALC approaching the rear view, we'll see in MRC if we get that sort of continued increase in card quality every time we get a new set. Of course, we're getting new cards that fit into these established archetypes. I'm not talking about like class bonus specific stuff, just cards that are so strong in an element that they start to see either like fringe play, sideboard play, or if they're strong enough to make their way holistically into into an archetype. I always think about cards like Meltdown, right, which is seeing a lot of like fringe sideboard play, stuff like that. But it's been a little while since we got a card. I think the last one that I can really point to is like Lurking Assailant from FTC, that is like so ubiquitous and strong that it fits into so many archetypes. But a lot of these pillar cards in the game right now came out of DOA. Mm-hmm. So I think it is interesting to see if MRC or even set 5 brings us a more a wider selection.
My hope, right? Because we've been saying this whole thing, very positive look on MRC season, an ALC season. However, a lot of these ally decks are copy paste minus 10 cards.
Sure.
I'd love to see each champion ally decks start to become more diverse.
Right.
With using more of the class specific champions.
Sure.
Right? Because certain, let's look at Win Tony for a second.
Sure.
90% of the cards in Win Tony have historically just been a Lorraine deck minus the class bonus Lorraine cards.
Sure.
However, recently we've been seeing things like Rose get played more, and I think that's awesome. I would love to see more of the champions take the card identities to heart.
Right.
If we're playing a water deck, I would like to see more class specific things for, like a water Diana, like more ranger stuff instead of just I'm playing Gildas, Trapper, lurking, like all of that stuff. But I'd like to see that pool get bigger for ranger specifically. So when you're looking at the list, you're like, oh wow, there's choices in here.
Yeah.
I would like that.
It's sort of a blessing and a curse, right? The design around class bonus as a mechanic it's good and it's bad, right? It's understandable that as a new game, you can't put 5 or 6 of these very powerful effects behind class bonus on, allies in a single set, and then it sort of like skews the class percentage, right? So you look at, like Korhazi Trapper is a great example. That is a ranger card, and Flavor Flea is a ranger card. It generates a prep counter, right? Like it plays very much in that ranger assassin
like hybrid area.
Yeah. But they didn't give a class bonus, because if they did, it'd be far too powerful for those archetypes, right? So we fit into this sort of strange place where like Lunette and Gildas, right, are both like cleric cards with a cleric keyword, but they didn't put them behind cleric class bonus. Granted, at the time, because cleric didn't exist, but for that same reason, that if you gave Gildas to a class specifically, it would be absurd, right?
Yeah, well, so cleric deserves it right now.
Sure. So yeah, it's such a hard choice to put any of these hyper powerful cards behind that class bonus wall without spreading things equally. So I'm really curious to see how they will sort of do that. Rose is a great example of a very powerful card that is locked behind that class bonus for Warrior and for Guardian. That we got one Rose, right? We got Inzali or whatever,
right.
But we didn't get a whole lot of parallels elsewhere. So I think we'll probably get it little by little. That's what I assume our end goal will be.
Right. That was going to be my next question. Like moving forward, now that we have all 7 champions or like all 7 classes, right?
Right.
Do you think that we are going to see class bonus on more cards?
I think it really depends on how they deal with the limited environment. I know several times the developers have been pretty vocal that they want Grand Archive to be a limited playable game, draft, sealed, whatever. And when you do that, it makes it a lot harder for you to put class bonus on as many cards as you want to. I think if we don't focus on that limited, as we have been for these first 4 sets, and set 5 is where I think we're really going to see this, because it's a full booster set, right? Set 5, if we are a 7 class set, which is also like remains to be seen, I think we could see a lot more of that class bonus cards on an individual level. But I think as the game progresses, that's sort of where we'll get. And I do believe that a lot of the cards that are holding up the game right now are sort of like stopgaps until the card pool gets bigger. Like you said about Rose, and we see it in a few other places as well. Very slowly, the decks are widening, right? Like very slowly, these ally decks are becoming less of a 40 card deck with 20 additions for your class. They're becoming a 35 card deck, right? And slowly by little they're spreading out a little bit more. We did have a sort of strange reduction in that with the ban of Crystal of Empowerment, meaning that the Lorraine decks sort of moved away from what made them Lorraine decks, because Banner Knight is obviously much worse without Crystal of Empowerment. But I think that's a great example, right? Like cards like Banner Knight, cards like Rose, cards like Inzali, even though Cleric is bad. Cards like those are going to be the defining cards that sort of, when you look at the game 3 or 4 years from now and you're like, I want to play an ally aggressive deck. I think at that point there will be several options that are pretty divergent.
Right.
Whereas like right now, that's not really the case.
Right.
You like choose a color and the class comes sort of secondary.
Right. But going back to like class specific uniques that are, like Rose and stuff like that, I was surprised to see that Dahlia not seeing any play.
Yeah.
Because like when we were talking about her initially, when she was first spoiled, she seemed like a slam dunk for water.
Yeah, I think Dahlia is an unfortunate design. I think she's really cool, and I think she does have very powerful text. Unfortunately, we live in a world where Nullifying Lantern is too strong, and especially in the hands of a water player, you are way more incentivized to be the Nullifying Lantern deck because of the interaction with Fracturize than the opposite, right? You're not really encouraged to play Dahlia in your water deck because you know that the fire decks like Erupting, Firezander, whatever, are way better at utilizing their graveyard and are way more hurt by the existence of a Nullifying Lantern, that just like you're really not encouraged to play her. So I think that is pretty unfortunate. I sort of wish that she was worded a little bit differently and maybe didn't count element cards. Maybe she counted something else so that she could see some play, because I think she is very powerful, but at least in the current world where Nullifying Lantern is so ubiquitous, I think she's going to struggle. I think there is a world where if they ban Erupting Rhapsody, Dahlia does see some real play, because a lot less people are packing that Nullifying Lantern hate if Erupting is gone.
Right.
But I do think she's very powerful, but even Dahlia sits in that same spot where she has class bonus, but her relevant effect is not the class bonus effect. Because, she's designed with this purpose that she can be played elsewhere,
right.
We love Dahlia. We stand.
Yeah. That's why I brought her up, because like we've been talking a lot about the uniques like Rose and Inzali, but I think the water
Crimson Tear.
But
But that card also doesn't have class bonus. Just absurdly good.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah. But that's always the case, right? Like every card that we talk about being absurdly good is not a class bonus card.
Right.
There's very few that we're like, oh, this card's absurd that has class bonus, because it doesn't see as ubiquitous play because it's only in one class.
So while we're talking about the future, right, I have a question to pose to you.
Sure.
What type of card would you love to see in the game?
Oh my God, that's impossible. I hope that you have an answer, because
Well, I'm wondering, like what cards, right, are we missing from Grand Archive?
It's you come here to the show, ladies and gentlemen, for our
we're just
opinions,
vibing, right?
So you guys probably all know my opinion. Wrath of God is the card that I want. Wrath of God, is a Magic the Gathering card. I want a card that says destroy all allies. That is affordable.
And at fast speed?
Fast speed might be asking too much. Just like, I don't want to cast Ravaging Tempest, okay?
Right.
Just like give me a way to remove allies.
I want less than that, for sure. I want like an actual Doomblade that I can cast in any color.
Yeah, that works too.
Give me a Norm Doomblade that costs 3. I'm fucking happy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think allies get to go a little hog wild because there's nothing to there's no like threat to them, right?
Right.
Like you have certain cards that you like, you're playing against Lorraine, don't play all your allies into a sweep, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like sub that, where's your pressure? Where's the threat of losing your allies?
I think, unfortunately, though I do agree that I would like more single target removal, I don't think the single target removal solves that issue because you're trading 1-for-1 anyways, so your opponent's not really disincentivized from flooding the board regardless because you're going to have to try to trade 1-for-1 with them. It's obviously very good against Wind Allies decks with like Lords, like Phalanx Captain, which are much more susceptible to Doomblade, but these like Water Allies decks are just flooding the board with 2/3s. They don't really care about you playing Doomblade. But yeah, I think you and I are on the same page that more ally interaction is what we would like. Right. But of course, that skews to a player archetype. I know there are plenty of people that like these aggressive decks and like games to end quickly, but I think you and I are both in the same boat that I find the advanced element cards to be the most interesting in the game, and with allies being so efficient and so aggressive, it's really hard for a lot of these advanced element decks to get to play the game for very long.
Right.
They either have to like kill you almost immediately, stuff like Merlin, where she just gets out of range of being able to die within a turn or two, and the same exact thing for Luxemzander
and
right?
Diana.
Diana just kills you,
right?
But like Luxemzander and Merlin are just so absurdly powerful that they are able to get out of range of the aggro decks fairly quickly once they hit level 3. I think it would be cool to have a 1-for-1 deck is all I'm saying.
Right. I would love to play just like an actual mid-range deck where you're just like, I'll trade that for one, I'll play this guy out,
right,
do a little disruption. I think that deck would be fun.
Yeah, I think it would be cool too. We'll see. Fingers crossed.
I mean, we got the Bonatar. I mean, that's got to do something, right?
You don't put a Doomblade? You think shred to ribbons?
Yeah, it's you don't put a bone guy on a card that's not a kill card. Come on.
We will see. But yeah, unless you have any closing thoughts, Steven, I think that's our.
No, I think the only closing thought I have is that I'm, even though we have some slight things that we wish about the game, I think the game is healthier than any game I've ever played at set 3, right?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm going to go that far, but I'm very happy with where the game is, and I do think it's the healthiest that it's ever been. And like I had said earlier, I think looking back, this will be where people talk about, this is the start of Grand Archive, right? Where for so many other games, nobody's ever talking about like playing Alpha Magic the Gathering, right? Like, because it wasn't a complete game, when the first set came out, and I think the ALC will be where boomers like us point to,
that was the good
that's Grand Archive right there, playing 3-mana 2/3s.
It's very, very indicative of how I view Yu-Gi-Oh!
Right.
It's like back in my day, I played zombies and it was great.
Right.
And now it's
yeah, I mean, I think you get that a lot, right? Like the golden age of a new game. And I think that's where we're at, and I've a lot of confidence in the development team that we can stay in that golden age for as long as they want us to. But overall, very, very positive on ALC. I haven't gone back to watch our FTC retrospective, but I assume it was probably less positive than this one.
I'm assuming it was very doomer, based off of how that format went.
Right, but it's growing pains, right? It's so great that we came out on the other side of of the FTC release and the FTC format with I think probably their best set to date. I think ALC is just terrific design. There's something to look at that I think shouldn't be understated is that if we look at ALC and we look at the conversation that we had today, and we look at all of the conversations that are had at all about any concerns about Grand Archive, none of them are cards released in ALC, right? None of our problematic cards are cards in ALC. Some of them are cards in Proxy's Vault, but like ALC as a whole, I think is just designed very well, which is good. Something that I've forget who told me, I don't know if it was one of the devs or whatever, but something that I hadn't noticed until somebody pointed it out. that a lot of people have problems with the distinction between target and choose, which we won't, dwell on. But there have been no cards that choose since DOA.
Yeah.
Which
is
terrific. I mean, it shows, the growth of Weebs of the Shore as a developer, and the skills that they've sort of honed in on as they've been creating the game.
Right.
So super super proud of how the game looks. Very healthy. We're very excited to continue forward with our ALC season, and look forward to MRC that hopefully some people, not going to name any names, will show us some cards eventually. Please just give me something.
It doesn't.
Anything.
It doesn't even.
Morsel,
it literally doesn't even have to be. Just give me the Tristan stuff.
Well,
just show me Tristan. You said there's so many of them. Show me some of them. What? What are you?
I don't know.
Don't me.
We'll have to find out.
You were begging. You were begging for the cleric stuff. Let me beg for the Tristan stuff.
Hey. All right, guys. So I think that's all we have for you this week. Thank you guys for sticking with us. Thank you guys for watching. Reminder, of course, if you want to be part of the show and you want to watch the show live, you can find us shooting the show live Fridays, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Asterisk. We will be back next week, I believe. We don't have any pressing issues for next week.
Nope.
So we'll be back Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The previous episode of the podcast goes live Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Asterisk. This week it'll be a little bit late. That one's on me. Sorry about that. But thank you guys, of course, for watching, and we
are going to get out of here.
We'll see you next week. Woo. Ric Flair. Woo.
Woo.
Woo.